Hello, guys. Welcome back to my forensic science podcast series. I'm Vanessa Herrera, and in today's episode, we're going to be exploring one of the most iconic, controversial cases in modern forensic science, the trial of O.J. Simpson. We'll take a closer look at the DNA evidence collected from during the investigation, reflect on key takeaways from my forensic science course, and discuss how this case has shaped the role of DNA evidence in criminal cases today. We'll also cover a current event that showcases the advancements in DNA technology and share resources. So let's dive right in. As part of my forensic science course, I've learned about the importance of DNA evidence in criminal investigations. What makes DNA such a powerful tool is its ability to match biological material found at crime to specific individuals with incredible accuracy. However, I also learned how important it is to handle DNA properly to prevent contamination or mishandling. The O.J. Simpson trial was one of the first major cases to heavily rely on DNA evidence, and it brought many of the issues to the public's attention. The prosecution's case largely rested on the DNA evidence, which on paper seemed overwhelming, like proven guilty evidence, but let's break down the key pieces of forensic DNA evidence from this case. So, to start, let's have a little background. So, O.J. Simpson was an ex NFL player and an actor. He was a very known man and he was a liked man. In 1994, um, his wife, Nicole Simpson, and her friend at the time, Ron Goldman, they were found dead at the crime scene. And yeah, so that's a little backstory about it. So, one of the critical pieces of evidence was a series of blood drops found at the crime scene leading away from Nicole Brown Simpson's condo. These blood drops were tested, and the DNA matched O.J. Simpson's genetic profile. The probability of the blood belonging to someone other than Simpson is estimated to be 1 in 170 million, a powerful statistic that the prosecution used to argue that Simpson was at the crime scene. One of the most infamous pieces of evidence was a pair of gloves. One glove was found at the crime scene, and its match was found on O.J. Simpson's property. Both gloves had blood on them, and DNA tests showed that the blood contained a mix of Simpson's DNA, Nicole Brown Smith's, and Ron Goldman's. The defense famously questioned the gloves, with Simpson trying them on in court, and the defense arguing, if it doesn't fit, you must acquit. That line has been used so much in Netflix series and shows, and it's just like a really big line that will forever be there. The gloves had shrunk from the blood and weather conditions, which led to a dramatic moment that may have contributed to Simpson's innocence. So when he tried on the gloves in court, they didn't fit him, and that changed the jury's mind like a lot. So here I want to show you guys some of the crime scene pictures. Okay, so here you can see um there's like the bloody footprints and like the blood drops on the left, and then the picture on the right has the gloves that didn't fit him that were found. One was found in the property, as I said, and one of them was found at the murder scene. So yeah, this is how they looked. Yeah. So blood was also found in Simpson's white Ford Bronco. DNA tests showed that the blood belonged to both Simpson and the two victims. This was another piece of critical evidence that prosecution used to link Simpson to the crime. So let me, okay. And so the blood evidence inside the vehicle suggested that Simpson had contact with the victims while he was bleeding, which raised further suspicion about his involvement. Bloody socks were discovered in O.J. Simpson's bedroom, and forensic analysis revealed the presence of Nicole Brown Simpson's blood on them. Again, the DNA evidence was presented to connect Simpson directly to the crime. This was one of the most damning pieces of forensic evidence, as it seemed to suggest that Simpson had been in close contact with his ex-wife's blood after the murder. In addition to all of that, hair and fiber evidence played a role in the trial. Fibers from the Bronco were found on clothing at the crime scene. The hair consistent with Simpson's hair was found on one of the victims. These findings, while not as conclusive as DNA, further tied Simpson to the crime scene. Now, this is where things get really interesting. Despite the seemingly overwhelming forensic evidence, the defense team managed to create doubt about the integrity of the evidence. They argued that the LAPD had mishandled the crime scene, which could have led to contamination. And in fact, they suggested that some evidence must have been planted to frame O.J. Simpson. For example, they pointed out that the blood evidence on the socks in Simpson's bedroom wasn't found until weeks after the initial search. This delay raised questions about how thoroughly the police searched Simpson's home and whether the evidence had been tampered with after the fact. Additionally, the defense team questioned the handling of the blood samples themselves. During the trial, it came to light that some of the blood samples collected at the scene had not been stored properly, and there were issues with how the samples were cataloged and transported. The defense used these points to argue that the evidence could have been contaminated or even fabricated. One of the most dramatic moments of the trial was when the Simpson tried on the gloves, and as I mentioned earlier, he did the infamous line, "If it doesn't fit, you must acquit." That moment, along with the defense's challenges to the DNA evidence, was enough to put doubts in the jury's mind. So, reflecting on what I learned from my forensic science course, this case really opened my eyes on how critical and crucial it is to properly handle DNA evidence. DNA is such a powerful tool and it will link to the crimes, it'll link to people, everything. But as we saw in the O.J. Simpson case, its power can be undermined if there's any doubt about how it was collected or stored. After learning about the complexities of the DNA profiling, I found myself researching about forensic contamination, and I found an article that mentioned about modern DNA collection techniques and how they've improved since the Simpson case. Um, there are so many technical aspects to it, like understanding Loki and allele matching, which is why it took some time to fully grasp the concept. Um, I ended up explaining some of the concepts to a family member, which helped me cement my understanding of DNA profiling. Teaching someone else is often the best way to reinforce what you've learned, and it helps me appreciate the nuances and everything of forensic DNA. So let's revisit the O.J. Simpson case with the focus on how the forensic science played a pivotal role. So, as I said before, O.J. Simpson was charged with the murders of his ex-wife, Nicole Brown Simpson, and her friend Ron Goldman. This case was like such a huge media circus, with the trial even being broadcasted across the nation. The prosecution's case largely depended on the DNA evidence, including the blood that was found at the crime scene, in the vehicle, and at his home. The defense, however, managed to raise enough doubt about the handling collection of the evidence to secure a not guilty verdict. During the strength of the DNA matches, the jury acquitted Simpson, meaning he was innocent, leaving the case as one of the most debated trials in history. So DNA technology has come a long way since the Simpson trial. I found an article titled How Genetic Genealogy Solved a 40-Year-Old Cold Case, and it highlights how forensic scientists are now using genetic genealogy to solve cases that had previously gone cold for decades. So basically, old serial killers, they're able to use this to identify them. This method was famously used to capture the Golden State Killer, and it's becoming such a common tool for law enforcement. It combines DNA analysis with genealogy databases and allows investigators to trace DNA samples back to relatives of the suspects. Um, Lastly, I recommend reading a paper I found on the Simpson trial and how modern practices have improved since then. It's a great resource for understanding how forensic science has evolved since the 1990s. And science is obviously always evolving, very needed in anything, crime scenes, anything. It's always going to evolve, and the technologies will always advance. So, what can we learn from the O.J. Simpson case? It's a clear example of how forensic DNA evidence can be both incredibly powerful and vulnerable to doubt if not handled correctly. While the case remains controversial, it had a lasting impact on the fields of forensic science, highlighting the importance of maintaining the integrity of DNA evidence. Thank you so much for tuning into today. I hope you enjoyed the exploration of the forensic DNA in the O.J. Simpson trial. And I'll see you next episode. We'll be diving into another fascinating topic. Thank you. Bye.